They've scored more goals, made fewer mistakes, and received fewer penalties, but they are still paid less than their male counterparts. This isn't the story of one team. This is a collective story of women in football. A single football player such as Barcelona's Lionel Messi is paid more than 1,693 professional female players in the world's top 7 women's football leagues. This is not strange in the world of sports, where the top 100's highest paid athletes are all male, except one woman, Serena Williams, ranked at 63. But in football, the gender pay gap is so massive that the prize money allocated by FIFA for the Women's World Cup prize this year was less than a tenth of the Men's World Cup prize in 2018. Although FIFA is a non-profit association with a core mission to develop the game of football across the globe, its investment in women's football has been far less than the men's game. While many people may think that the pay gap is linked to a difference in revenue generated by men's and women's World Cup, what they don't realize is that discrimination against women's football was institutionalized around 100 years ago, at a time when many women football clubs attracted larger crowds than their male counterparts. And to understand the reality of women's football today, we have to go back to the 19th century England. The first women's football match was played in England in 1895, and the game became huge during the First World War. Prior to the war, women were still mainly expected to stay at home. But the war brought new changes to the social structure of English society. Hundreds of thousands of women joined the workforce to fill the gap left by men who were sent to fight. Between 1914 and 1918, more than 1.5 million women were working in munition factories to help the war effort. During that time, the Men's Football League was suspended, and different factories started women's football teams as a way to entertain their employees and promote their well-being. The games were used to raise money for charities, and the teams showed exemplary skills, allowing them to gain recognition from large audiences. The Munitions Cup was established in 1917 and was played in the official Football Association club grounds, drawing crowds of tens of thousands of spectators. It was known as the golden age of women's football, with matches that attracted even bigger crowds than the men's game, sometimes more than 50,000. In the 1920s, the sport reached the peak of its popularity, with as many as 150 women's teams playing in England. One of the most popular athletes of that time was Lily Parr, who played for the Dick Cares Lady football team, one of the most successful women's football teams in history. Parr scored more than 1,000 goals in her 31-year career. She had shot so hard that she once broke the arm of a professional male goalkeeper. But soon after the war ended, the FA took a decision that would shackle the growth of women's football for decades. When the men returned from the war, many women were forced to give up the jobs they took during the war, and football was no longer seen as fit for women. The top English physician described the sport as an unsuitable game for women and too much for women's physical frame. Despite the warnings and criticism, women continued to play. In 1921, the FA ruled that football is unsuitable for women players and banned women from playing in all its affiliated grounds. The ban changed the course of the game for women for the rest of the century and was only lifted 50 years later, in 1971, in the course of which it deprived women's players of professional training and a public platform for their games. And many countries followed England's footsteps in banning women from having professional careers in football for decades. With a head start, men's football flourished, while women's football lagged behind. And it took decades for football associations like FIFA and UEFA to give official recognition and funding to women's football. The first Women's World Cup tournament was held in 1991, more than 60 years after the first men's tournament. And even though women's football is more advanced now than any other time in history, the gender pay gap is a starting proof of how the legacy of the past has still had its toll in women's football today.